The sky was grey, not stormy, not calm. Just heavy. Like it, too, was holding something in. Jungkook parked the car just outside the rusted iron gate. He turned the engine off but didn't move. His hands stayed on the wheel. His jaw clenched. His eyes, unreadable. At the passenger seat, little Noah swung his legs. His voice was soft. "Appa, we arrived." Jungkook closed his eyes, slowly nodding. Jungkook opened the car door, lifting Noah out. The little boy gripped his hand tightly, his brows furrowed. "YN. Mama here," he said softly, unsure. It had been over a week since the contract between YN and Jungkook ended, the one where she had agreed to look after Noah. Ever since then, Noah kept asking about her. YN believed Noah hated her for not being his real mother, for the lie he unknowingly lived. But the truth was different. The day Noah found out she wasn't his mother, the little boy was terrified, not because she wasn't his mom, but because he feared that meant she would leave him. And she did. Jungkook struggled to handle the aftermath. Noah shut down, confused and heartbroken. But Jungkook managed, barely, holding himself together for Noah's sake. He couldn't bring himself to reach out to YN again, not after seeing how exhausted she looked the day she walked away. Every part of him wanted to stop her, to explain, to beg her to stay. But it felt selfish. She looked so fragile, so worn down, that even his guilt couldn't justify asking her for more. He had already hurt her more than he ever meant to, and it showed in the way she avoided his eyes during his hospital visits, in the distance she maintained without saying a word. It was clear she was drawing a line. Even Mina, who once welcomed him warmly, now stood protectively between them. She didn't let Jungkook come close, and he could sense that YN had told her everything. He understood then, YN needed space, needed time. And before he could even begin to ask for forgiveness, he knew he had something far more important to face first. Something he discovered recently, but before that he finally chose to confront the one truth he had run from all along, the truth which was his biggest fear come true. It broke him, but it was time. Now that Noah knew, things might not be as hard, but they wouldn't be easy either. Jungkook hesitated, lowering himself to meet Noah's eye level. "No, buddy. YN Mama isn't here, but today, we're going to meet someone special. Someone important to you." To me, Noah didn't understand, but he nodded. He always nodded when Jungkook used that voice, quiet, but serious. They walked through the gate. It creaked open like a sigh. Noah's tiny feet shuffled, dragging a little. He glanced around at the stones. "This park?" "Not really, baby. It's a place where people come to remember the ones they loved." They stopped in front of 3 gravestones. Faded. Quiet. Familiar only to Jungkook's heart. He knelt down slowly, pulling Noah into the shelter of his arms. His heart felt heavy, almost too heavy to carry, but he kept his voice soft. "Noah, buddy, I need you to be brave for me today." The words trembled slightly as they left his lips. How do you tell something like this to a child so small, a child who still held the world in simple terms? Good or bad, safe or scary, love or loss? Jungkook's chest ached with the weight of it. Would Noah even understand what he was about to say? He swallowed hard, brushing his fingers gently against the soft curve of Noah's cheek. "I want you to be brave, because Appa is being brave too, baby." His voice cracked at the word Appa. The word Noah had always called him. The word Jungkook wasn't sure he had the right to hear anymore. Noah tilted his head, confused, his big eyes searching Jungkook's face. His thumb curled tightly into his fist, that small nervous habit he'd always had when something didn't feel right. He could sense the shift in his father's tone. The gentleness. The weight behind every word. He didn't know why Appa was being like this, soft, sad, almost scared. But children feel things before they understand them. And Noah could feel something was wrong. "You remember how you always ask me, where your mama is?" Noah blinked up at him, confused but listening. But I have mama YN now." Jungkook's throat tightened at those words. They felt like both warmth and a knife. "YN is special, buddy, So special, he smiled faintly, but I need to tell you about your real mama. The first mama, the one who gave birth to you. He took a deep breath, steadying the ache in his chest, then gently pointed at the gravestone beside them. She's sleeping here. Noah's eyes followed his finger. His brows furrowed. Her name was Unya. And your Appa, my big brother, his name was Jihoon. Noah inched closer to the stone, his small face scrunching in confusion. His voice came out quiet, trembling. Appa, he looked up at Jungkook. Not Appa. Jungkook's heart shattered in silence. His breath caught. No, Noah. I'm your Samchan. Your uncle. But I raised you, fed you, held you, just like your Appa would have. Noah's lower lip quivered. His eyes filled with tears. He stared at Jungkook like his world was turning upside down. You lie too. Jungkook shook his head immediately, reaching out, voice raw but gentle. No, baby. I never wanted to lie. I was just scared you wouldn't understand yet. Noah shook his head hard, backing away slightly. His tiny fists beat against his chest. No. You Appa. You. He screamed, as loud as he could. Jungkook stepped forward, catching his fists before they could hurt his own little body. He knelt down, pulling him into his arms, not letting go. Hey. I'm still here. Still your Appa. Still the one who tucks you in. I still love you the same, Noah. That will never, ever change. But Noah couldn't stop crying now. He shook his head again and again, his sobs growing deeper, not loud, but wild and broken, like his little heart didn't know what to do with the pain. Why Mama whine go? I want her. I want Mama. I know. His voice cracked, me too. He pulled Noah into his chest as tightly as he could, and Noah buried his face in his shirt, sobbing against him. I thought, keeping you safe meant hiding the truth. But I was wrong. This is your family too. He turned his gaze to the graves. The air was still, as if the sky was holding its breath. Your Mama and Papa, they were good people. They loved you. They loved me too. And they gave me you, the best gift I've ever been given. Noah whimpered against his chest. Then, why they leave me? If they love me, why? His voice was broken, small, trembling. Jungkook kissed his forehead, his lips lingering against the boy's skin. Sometimes, we lose people, baby. Even when we love them. Even when they love us. But love doesn't go away. It stays. In here, he tapped Noah's heart gently, and we carry it forever. Noah clung to him tightly, sobbing quietly now. Jungkook looked up at the sky, eyes glassy. His voice cracked, a whisper, meant only for the wind and the souls resting below. I'm sorry, Hyung. Unya. I kept him safe. I swear I tried. The breeze stirred the trees, soft and solemn, as if memory itself had reached out to hold him back. But there was another tomb nearby. One he hadn't dared to look at. His father's. Jungkook kept his eyes away, refusing even a glance in that direction, not because he didn't know it was there, but because he didn't know if he could bear to face it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The hospital corridors at night. Jungkook stepped out of the boardroom, still in his tailored dark navy suit, the fabric crisp but his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. The long hours of meetings and decisions weighed on him, things that required his title as major shareholder and board director. But if he was honest with himself, he wasn't there only for business. He had wanted to see YN. Even from a distance. A brief glance at her. He knew she was here, somewhere in the hospital, probably working late as always. Yet, despite all his efforts, she remained just out of reach. He hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Every time he tried, it's either Mina won't let him or she was with Bogum. Bogum hovered around her, with that infuriating smile and awkward attempts to catch her attention, gnawed at Jungkook's patience. Jungkook had already tried to transfer Bogum to another wing, far away from where YN's cabin, but that man kept finding excuses to return. To hover. It made Jungkook's blood boil. If it weren't for the hospital's politics and his promise to stay professional. Jungkook's fists clenched at the thought. If it weren't for the necessity to stay professional, he might have let his anger explode and Bogum might have broken jaw by now. But for now, he kept it buried beneath a mask of calm. But tonight, he hadn't even seen her yet. His steps had just turned toward her wing when he heard it yelling. Loud, desperate yelling echoing through the hallway. A man was yelling at the security guards, accusing, his voice hoarse and broken. Jungkook's expression hardened, eyes narrowing, as he walked briskly toward the commotion. Every step was calculated, his shoes echoing against the sterile floor. When the other staff saw him approaching, they went pale. Their gazes dropping to the floor, terrified of what the man's outburst might mean for the hospital's reputation and fearing Jungkook's reaction. His voice cut through the chaos, cold and commanding. Eyes sharp and cold, but firm. "What's going on here?" The man turned sharply, tears streaking his cheeks, pupils wild. "Sir, his wife just delivered. There were complications, and don't you sir me. Your hospital. Your doctors. You call this the best hospital in Seoul? My baby's turning blue and no one's doing anything." Jungkook's brows furrowed. "Where's the doctor?" he was asking to staff, but the man, eyes blazing, standing in front of, suddenly grabbed the lapel of Jungkook's white dress shirt beneath the suit jacket. Blood smeared across the pristine fabric. Gasps echoed. Security froze. Nurses stilled. "Man, I don't know what kind of damn hospital this is," the man spat, voice shaking with fury. "But if anything happens to my wife or daughter, I swear I'll drag every single one of you to court and burn this place to the ground. I'll ruin all of you." Jungkook didn't move, not even a flinch. His jaw clenched. He stared into the man's eyes, not with anger, but understanding. Pain. Before the man could answer, Wyan appeared at the edge of the crowd. The shouting drew her in. Still on from her long shift, stepped into the hallway after hearing the shouting. Her steps slowed when she saw the chaos. Then halted completely when her eyes landed on Jungkook. Her breath caught. As she saw a man had his hands around Jungkook, blood dripping onto his chest, and Jungkook wasn't fighting back. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, trembling. Not from rage. From something deeper. "I promise, nothing will happen to your baby. Tell me exactly what's going on." He gently removed the man's grip. Put his palms together in a respectful apology. "No pride, no ego. My wife, she's bleeding inside. I don't know, and my baby, she's not breathing. They said the doctor will come, but it's been half an hour. No one's treating her. My daughter is dying. What's the status now?" He instantly turned to staff, demanding an answer. "The baby's oxygen is falling. We placed her on emergency vent. Neonatal team paged. Who's the attending neonatologist?" "Dr. Leo," she answered, voice low and anxious. "But he's not reachable. No one able to contact him." Jungkook's eyes darkened. His fist shook briefly before he forced himself to loosen it. Who authorized him to leave without a backup? Shouting, "There isn't another doctor available." Silence. No one answered. The air in the hallway turned suffocating. And then, "I can handle this," she said firmly. Jungkook turned sharply. She had stepped forward, calm but clearly exhausted, still in her scrubs. Her hair was messier than usual. Her eyes tired. But her voice strong. "But Dr. Wyan's not NICU. She's pulmonology. I've trained in neonatal airway procedures. I've handled this before. I can stabilize the baby." Jungkook's gaze locked with hers as if asking for the permission. He didn't speak for a moment. He just looked at the woman he had missed dearly. Past weeks stood in front of him now, ready to fight for a life she didn't even know again, just because someone had to. He forced himself to act as professional, and his voice finally came, low and decisive. "Right now, saving that baby is the only thing that matters." And as Wyan turned and walked down the hallway, Jungkook stood still, his shirt ruined, his fists slowly unclenching, and no one else dared to move. Wyan's eyes met his for a brief, electric moment. In that glance, she saw more than anger. She saw something fragile beneath it. His hands, clenched fists, were trembling ever so slightly, a crack in the armor he showed the world. And somehow, it shook her more than anything else. She saw it in the way his eyes flickered, his breath caught. His silence screamed louder than any shout. Jungkook stepped into the hospital's private washroom, the door clicking shut behind him. It was cold inside, quiet except for the gentle dripping of a leaky tap. He moved like a ghost toward the sink, turning the water on with trembling fingers. His gaze lifted and froze. His reflection stared back at him, sharp jawline, damp hair, wide eyes. But something else stared too. Something deeper behind his own eyes. Blood. Not just on his collar now, but on his hands. It wasn't real, he knew it wasn't real, but that never mattered. The mind doesn't care for what's real. It cares only for what it remembers. And Jungkook remembered everything that happened years ago. Flashing red and blue lights lit the road like a battlefield. Rain pounded the street, washing blood across the asphalt. 2 wrecked cars. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. And screaming. Nuna. Jungkook's own voice echoed in his ears as he ran toward the stretcher, blood soaking through his sleeves. His sister-in-law lay there, writhing in pain, her pregnant belly heaving with every breath. Jungkook, she gasped, gripping his arm with blooded fingers. Please, please save my baby. I can't lose them. Her eyes, wide, terrified, were all he could see. He had arrived seconds after the crash, the sound still ringing in the air. He hadn't been in the car with them. He had stayed back. He had fought with them the day before. With his father. With his brother. He remembered the words exactly. I'm not Jihoon. I never will be. So stop comparing me to him like I'm some failed copy. You treat me like garbage, like I don't exist unless I mess up. You know what? Go. Just go. Both of you. Get out of my life. He had slammed the door. That was the last thing he ever said to them. The next day, they were gone. Really gone. Leaving him alone. It says people should be cautious of what they asked for, and Jungkook didn't knew he would learn this in such hard way. Jihoon had taken most of the impact trying to shield Yunya. Their father died on the spot. Yunya made it to the hospital just long enough to scream in agony as they performed an emergency C-section. Only Noah survived. Jungkook gasped for air and stumbled back from the sink. The washroom spun around him, walls narrowing, floor tilting. His palms slammed against the counter. He looked down, his hands were soaked in blood. Not real. Not real. But they felt warm. Sticky. Stop, he whispered. Please stop. He gripped the edge of the sink, his knuckles turning white. But it didn't silence the voices. It's convenient, isn't it? The neglected son suddenly becomes the heir. He always hated Jihoon. Maybe he wanted this. He remembered standing at the funeral, Noah crying in Hannah's arms as if the baby could feel the dread, but he couldn't even comfort him as he wasn't even on his right mind at that time, but reporters hovering him like vultures. He remembered the quiet accusations coming from people around him. Maybe he planned all of this. Everything will be his now since Jihoon is gone. Few days after, Jungkook had stepped onto the podium, dressed in all black, jaw clenched, eyes burning. I don't want a single penny from my father's will. Everything, the shares, the property, the name is in Noah's name now. I'll only manage it until he turns the right age to look after this business. He takes everything. He had shut them all up. But no one could shut the voice in his head. Back in the washroom, Jungkook slid to the floor, his back pressed against the cold tiles, knees drawn to his chest. His breathing was uneven. Shaky. His lips trembled as he buried his face in his hands. I didn't mean it, he whispered. Hyung. I didn't mean it. He saw Jihoon smile again. That kind, quiet smile. His brother never raised his voice. Never fought him back. It wasn't Jihoon who made Jungkook feel small. It was their father. The constant comparisons. The lectures. The praise that always went to Jihoon. Even though Jihoon would defend him, even though Yunya would say, you don't need to be like anyone, Jungkook. Just be yourself. And now they were both gone. Everyone who ever saw him, not just as a shadow, was gone. He was scared of what he could do to the people who really loved him. His fingers gripped his hair as another wave of memory slammed into him. Yunya screaming. The smell of blood. Noah's first cry. The guilt of rejecting YN. The hospital lights blinding him as doctors yelled for more units of blood. And YN confession, She confessed to him when he was at his lowest, and he replied he hadn't said it to hurt her. He said it to save her. Because if there was one thing Jungkook had convinced himself of, it was this. Everyone he loves ends up broken. Or dead. YN's disappointed look burned into his memory, the way she stared at him, not with sadness, but with pure, aching hatred. The way her voice shook as she screamed those words. Rich, manipulative, and entitled. Words he despised more than anything else in the world. He had heard them before, from strangers, from enemies, from the people who whispered behind his back. But hearing them from her, from the person he loved the most, was like a slap across the face. No, worse. It was a knife plunged straight into a wound that had never healed. And he couldn't bear it. It triggered something dark inside him. Something raw. So he did the only thing he knew how to do when cornered, he raised his voice at her. Not because he wanted to hurt her, but because her words had touched the deepest scars inside him, the ones carved by years of comparison, years of rejection, years of being told he would never be enough. Those same words had haunted him since he was a child. And now they came from her. The only person he ever thought might understand him. Please. Just stop, he said through gritted teeth. He pressed his forehead to the floor. But the voices didn't stop. The guilt didn't stop. The blood didn't fade. You said you wanted them gone. And now they are. You pushed her away. You broke her too. He couldn't breathe. He had only wanted to protect her. To stop her from falling into the same storm he could never escape. He didn't want her to see the darkest parts of him, the guilt, the self-hate, the truth he tried so hard to hide behind perfect suits and a CEO title. He slammed his fist against the floor, voice rising in desperation. Tears spilled from his eyes, sharp and hot. I never wanted any of this. I never wanted them to die. But it didn't matter. The world had already judged him. Now, all that remained was the weight. The guilt. The child he was raising. The company he was holding together. The emptiness no one saw. And the echo of a love he pushed away, to protect her from the ruin he believed he was. Outside this door, the world knew him as Jeon Jungkook, acting CEO, the genius who kept the company running, the man raising his brother's son alone, the one who survived. But inside, he was still screaming for someone who could hold him when everything inside him started to shatter. The conference room was thick with tension. Members of the hospital board sat scattered, some silent, some murmuring quietly. YN sat at the far end, her posture stiff, fingers nervously interlocked in her lap. Dark circles under her eyes gave away the exhaustion of a 36-hour shift, an emergency she wasn't trained for, and now this, a disciplinary meeting she didn't have the energy to fight. Her mistake had been real. The baby's heart had stopped. Just for seconds. But seconds were enough. Even though she'd stabilized the child, the line between hero and failure was razor-thin in medicine, and someone was about to make sure she fell hard. Across the room, Dr. Leo, the hospital's designated neonatal specialist, stood, lips pressed into a hard, bitter line. He wasn't tired. He wasn't sorry. He was angry. Let me just make this clear before we waste more time, he snapped, breaking the silence. I wasn't the one who jeopardized a newborn's life today. She was. His finger jabbed in YN's direction. She isn't even certified to handle neonatal cases. She had no right to step in. Some board members stirred, uncomfortable. A few frowned. She broke protocol, he continued, louder now. If she hadn't interfered, that baby wouldn't have flatlined in the first place. It's not my fault I wasn't in the emergency ward when a pulmonologist decided to play hero. YN didn't respond. She was too tired to argue, too ashamed of the mistake she did make, and too used to standing alone in rooms like this. She shouldn't have been anywhere near that child. Leo shouted. She broke the hospital's rules, and there should be no exceptions. Before anyone could respond, the doors opened. A quiet chill swept the room. Jeon Jungkook stepped in. Gone were the blood-stained clothes from earlier. He wore a fresh dark suit, black tie, hair pushed back clean and sharp. But nothing about him looked calm. His face was cold, unreadable, and that was what made everyone uneasy. He didn't walk to his seat at the head of the table. He moved the chair aside and stood in full view of every board member, physician, and director. His presence alone made the room feel smaller. Several people straightened up unconsciously. Some even dipped their heads in a brief nod of respect. Jungkook's gaze swept the room, only briefly flickering toward YN, who didn't look up. Then his eyes settled on Leo. "Dr. Leo," he said, voice low but sharp. "Where were you during the emergency?" Leo stiffened but forced a calm tone. I stepped out to the washroom. I was on my way back when the case came in." Jungkook's jaw ticked. "You were unreachable for over an hour," he said flatly. Leo hesitated, then rushed to defend himself. "I did report to the emergency wing after hearing the code, but Dr. YN was already handling the case. I was told to stay out. She's not certified, you know that. And she almost lost the baby. She should be punished." "This is malpractice." "It was my order," he interrupted coolly, "for her to take the case." Leo's voice rose. "Still, she had no clearance. She wasn't trained for it." Jungkook narrowed his eyes. "And where were you while the hospital was trying to reach you?" "I told you, I stepped out to." "You left the hospital premises," he cut him off, turning to the panel. "Without informing anyone." "To smoke." He raised his hand and the lights dimmed. A projector screen lit up. Security footage played. There was Leo, exiting the building from the staff corridor, pulling out a cigarette, leaning casually against the side wall. His phone buzzed on the table next to him, ignored. A quiet murmur spread through the room. Leo's face turned ghostly white. "I had stepped out, briefly," he began, voice faltering. "For 1 full hour," he replied, his tone like steel. "No handover. No response to pages. No permission. You broke at least 4 protocols." He listed them with ruthless precision. 1. Leaving duty post without official notice. 2. Ignoring emergency codes while on call. 3. Failure to respond to trauma team alert. 4. Neglect of a critical case under assigned department. "And this," he added darkly, "is not your first warning. Your past negligence reports are still active on record. You were spared last time. I won't repeat that mistake." Leo stood, his fists clenched. "You can't do this to me," he spat. "What about her? She almost killed a patient." He pointed again at YN, who finally looked up ashamed, but composed. "She admitted her mistake. She should be fired. She's the one you're protecting, isn't she? Because she handled your son's case. Everyone knows now. Don't pretend this isn't personal." The room tensed like it might explode. But Jungkook didn't react. No anger. No outburst. Only calm control, because he knows Dr. Leo trying to get on him by provoking him. He turned his gaze to YN, then looked to the board. "Rules apply to everyone," he said. Dr. YN made an error under emergency pressure. But had she not stepped in, we would have the kid he faced the head of the board. "I leave her judgment to your authority." The board head nodded and turned to YN. "Dr. YN," he said firmly. "Your record is clean. Your choice today was risky, but it saved lives. That said, protocol must be respected. You'll be suspended for 1 week," he continued, "and undergo a neonatal emergency retraining course. After that, you may resume duties." YN nodded silently, accepting the punishment with dignity. Leo let out a bitter laugh. "That's it? I get terminated, and she gets a slap on the wrist." "You got 4 slaps before this," he replied coolly. "You ignored every one. You're done." The rest of the directors nodded, silent but unanimous. Leo's face twisted in fury. He shot one last glare at Jungkook, then YN, before storming out of the room mumbling some profanities, the doors slamming shut behind him. A long silence followed. Jungkook finally moved to his seat but didn't sit. "The meeting is dismissed." And with that, the room slowly emptied. The tension, though unseen, clung to the air like fog refusing to lift. Jungkook hadn't taken his seat. He remained standing, tall, cold, composed, but there was a storm buried beneath that stillness. Across from him, Wyan sat unmoving, her face turned away, her posture straight but visibly trembling with fatigue. She looked like she was barely holding herself together, as if a single word, a single breath, might cause her to shatter right there. When she finally rose from her chair, the motion was slow, heavy, like gravity itself had doubled against her limbs. She hadn't rested in hours. Between a relentless shift and the emergency, her body had been running on nothing but willpower. But now that the adrenaline had drained from her system, she felt the hollowness in her bones, the ache in her muscles, the weight of judgment pressing on her from every direction. She took a step, then another, and her vision blurred. Her knees gave way before she could steady herself, and the world tilted. But before she could hit the floor, she found herself caught. Arms closed around her, steady, firm, familiar. Jungkook's scent filled her senses, clean fabric, faint cologne, and something else that made her chest tighten. Her hands instinctively gripped his suit jacket as he held her, pulling her against him like she was something fragile, breakable, precious. She could feel his heartbeat, fast, uneven, as if her fall had shaken something loose inside him. For a moment, the world paused. She didn't try to move. And he didn't let go. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable but his eyes burning with something he could no longer hide. There was panic in them, the kind that comes not from fear of failure, but from fear of losing something you still don't know how to hold on to. His hands tightened around her waist, almost as if by instinct, like letting go would mean watching her slip through his fingers forever. And she saw it all. She saw the worry he tried to bury beneath indifference, the guilt flickering just beneath his cold exterior, and the ache he carried in the silence he never broke. Her chest tightened. But before it could swallow her, she pulled away, slow, gentle, like peeling herself off a comfort she wasn't allowed to have anymore. "I'm okay," she muttered, her voice weak, cracked. But Jungkook reached out again, his hand catching her wrist, his brows drawn tight with concern. "No," he said, voice low and rough. "You're not." There was something desperate in his tone, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet kind of urgency, like he'd seen her slipping and didn't know how else to keep her from falling further. She was too exhausted to argue, but she still tried. "I can go by myself. I just need to get home." But he shook his head. Something flared behind his eyes, frustration, worry, and something dangerously close to affection. "Stop pretending you're fine," he said. "You've been running on fumes for hours." His voice faltered slightly. "You're exhausted. That's why the mistake happened. But that doesn't mean you're invincible." Her eyes dropped, guilt washing over her again, but she didn't deny it. She never had. Instead she tried to pull away again, but his hand caught hers, firm. "I'm dropping you," he said, final and absolute. There was no room for protest in his tone. "That's not a request." She opened her mouth to argue again, stubborn, hurting, afraid of being a burden, but he stepped forward, cutting her resistance off with presence alone. "I'm not letting you walk out in this condition," he added, quieter this time, but no less firm. There was no fight left in her. And even if there had been, it wouldn't have mattered. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't giving her distance. He wasn't turning away. He was standing with her, even if she didn't ask him to. So, without saying another word, Wyan let him lead her out of the meeting room. The dull ache in her head stirred her before her eyes even opened. A soft shift against her skin, then the quiet thud of something dropping to the floor. Wyan's eyes blinked open slowly. Her fingers reached up instinctively, brushing her forehead. The wet cloth that had been resting there now lay on the sheets beside her, its corner still damp, cooling the fabric. She sat up, breath catching in her throat, eyes scanning the room. This was her dorm. But something felt off. The room wasn't in the state she remembered. No scattered clothes. No overflowing cup of half-drunk coffee on the bedside table. It looked clean, tidy, lived in. Even though she hadn't been here in 3 days. Since Mina left for her hometown, the place had been abandoned. She hadn't had the strength or time to return. Her body had moved from ER to ICU to OR like a machine, until it finally shut down. She pushed the blanket off and got to her feet. Still weak, but not the kind of tired that draped over her like yesterday. Her body moved easier now, her mind clearer. As she stepped into the hallway, her eyes wandered over the living room. That, too, was different. Cushions neatly arranged. The air smelled faintly of ginger and something warm. Something comforting. Then, a faint clatter from the kitchen. Her tired heart lifted, just slightly. Mina. Had she come back early? She padded forward on bare feet, holding her breath. But it wasn't Mina. It was Jungkook. His back was turned toward the stove, stirring something gently in a small pot, sleeves rolled up, hair a bit messier than usual, like he'd been up all night. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she thought she was hallucinating. Maybe this was still the fever. Maybe this was a dream. Because in her memory, Jungkook had dropped her off last night and left afterwards. She remembered the blurry sensation of his arm around her, her cheek resting on his shoulder, and then darkness. But this wasn't part of that. Jungkook turned around, sensing her presence, and for a second, his eyes lit up just seeing her awake. "You're up," he said softly, walking toward her. She stared, wide-eyed. "How are you feeling?" His hand reached up to touch her forehead, instinctively checking for fever, but she flinched slightly, stepping back before his palm could make contact. Jungkook paused. She didn't mean to recoil. But the sight of him in her kitchen, cooking for her, talking to her like this, it was surreal. And painful. Like a dream built from memories she tried so hard to bury. He exhaled, lowering his hand but not his gaze. "At least better than yesterday," he murmured with a sigh of relief. She blinked. Words caught in her throat. Then finally, "What are you doing here?" His brows furrowed. "What do you mean, what am I doing here?" he said, voice tightening with restrained frustration. "You had a high fever yesterday. You collapsed when we entered the dorm, YN. Do you even realize how badly you've been pushing yourself past week?" His tone was scolding. Protective. Too close to the way he used to speak to her when they were something more than strangers. But that was the problem. He wasn't allowed to sound like that anymore. YN's voice came out flat, guarded. "Thanks for bringing me home. And for all this," she gestured vaguely toward the cleaned room. "But, you can leave now, I'm feeling okay." Her tone was guarded and she turned, walked past him, into the living room, needing space. Air. Distance. But he followed. YN. "No," she turned sharply, her voice cracking at the edge. "Please, just go." She didn't look at him. Couldn't. Because the sight of him in her space, warm and domestic and painfully gentle, snapped something inside her. Something she thought she had locked away. "I don't want to see your face right now," she whispered and failed to notice the hurt expression on his face. For YN, it wasn't anger. It was ache. Ache she had buried beneath layers of exhaustion and walls she worked so hard to build after everything happened, and she was glad that he didn't contacted her again because she needed that space so much that time. But being away from Noah and not able to see him anymore has created a scar in her heart. She tried to fill it by keeping busy. Jungkook didn't move. But his voice dropped to something gentler, more intimate. "What if I don't want to leave?" She looked up, startled. First time seeing a strong determination on his eyes. He stepped closer, voice steady now, gaze locked on her like she was the only thing in the world. "What if I want to stay, YN?" His words didn't shout. They lingered, quiet and weighty, like the stillness before a downpour. Something inside her snapped listening those words. "No. Not now, not again. What the hell you want from me?" she burst out, voice shaking. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" Her chest heaved with the words. They came out harsher than she meant, but she didn't stop. "I don't want you near me. Can't you understand that?" Lies. All of it. She knew it. He probably knew it too. Because no one missed Jungkook the way she did. No one carried the weight of his absence like it was stitched into bones the way she did. But her fear of trusting him again, was louder than longing. Jungkook didn't flinch. He just looked at her. Took in the hurt she threw like daggers. Then slowly, his gaze dropped to the floor, his eyes closed, as though trying to brace himself from something he couldn't avoid. "I can't," he said softly. YN's fists clenched. "Why?" she demanded. "Why can't you?" It was so easy for you before, wasn't it? To leave. To forget about me. To live your life like I never existed. What's changed now, Jungkook? She used his name directly. No titles. No professionalism. No mask. Her voice held pain, betrayal, and a fire he had seen only once on the day he broke her heart. His head stayed bowed for a moment longer. Then he looked up, eyes serious, unwavering. Many things changed, Wyan, he said. Back then, we didn't even knew each other that well. You asked me to pretend to help you get out of that arranged date your father had set up. It started from a deal, and ended before anything real could begin. His voice softened. But now, everything's different. The situation we are in different and we're not same like before. His mind flashed to the Jawn mansion. The night she cried. The night she kissed him. The night he kissed her back without thinking, only feeling. The night he heard her pain laid bare, spoken through the haze of alcohol and heartbreak. We have gotten closer, Wyan. And your confession. I told you before, she snapped, cutting him off. I don't mean the things I say when I'm drunk. That sentence still hit him harder than she knew. He had heard it before. He had believed it the first time. But not this time. Not after what he saw in her eyes that night. Not after the way she broke while confessing. Not after the way she held on to him like he was the last piece keeping her from drowning. Without a word, Jungkook stepped forward. And before she could react, his arms moved, gripping her gently but firmly, pulling her against his chest. She gasped. Jungkook, but he wasn't letting her go. One arm held her waist, the other hand reached up and cupped her cheek, guiding her gaze to meet his. His eyes burned, not with anger, but determination. She tried to push back, palms against his chest, but his grip only tightened slightly, grounding her. Let me go, she hissed, through clenched teeth. Never, he whispered back, the word falling from his lips like a vow. He wasn't just refusing to release her physically. He was telling her he never wanted to let her go again emotionally, mentally, not in this lifetime. His eyes scanned her face with a fragile reverence, as though he was trying to memorize every inch. But beneath Wyan's furious gaze, he saw it. Fear. And he knew. She wasn't angry at him. She was scared. So was he. Say it, he whispered, voice raw. Say it to my face, that you don't love me. If you really don't mean the things you said, look at me and say it. Wyan's eyes flashed. Why does it matter to you so much now? She demanded. Why do you need to know if I still have feelings for you or not? Her voice was trembling now, not just with rage, but something breaking through the cracks. Because as far as I remember, you didn't have any feelings for me. It's not true, he said firmly, stepping even closer. Then what? She scoffed. You're so desperate for my help now? Is that it? You want me back that badly? That twisted something in him. Do you really think that low of me? He asked, voice quieter, pained. But Wyan wasn't done. Do you think I'm doing this because I want you back? She asked, voice cold, bitter. Then she delivered the blow, I'm doing this for my son. The same words he had once spat at her during parking lot. And they landed like a slap. Jungkook's chest rose and fell. He closed his eyes, cursing himself for ever saying them. The weight of his past words crashed into him, guilt seeping into every breath. Even though he had apologized for his behavior to Wyan, but he knows it's not enough. He looked down, ashamed, then met her eyes again. Wyan, I've made mistakes. More than I can count. And I hate myself for them. But I never rejected you because I didn't feel anything. I rejected you because, he paused, heart in his throat, voice breaking as he finally said the truth he kept hidden all these years. Because I couldn't handle your feelings back then. His voice was trembling now. The pain unmistakable. And Wyan stood frozen in front of him, her anger still there, but flickering under the weight of something even heavier. His words echoed in her head, over and over. I couldn't handle your feelings back then. I never said I didn't have any for you. Was this real? Her mind raced, spiraling. Is he telling the truth? Did he always feel something for me? Then why didn't he say it? Why now? Why when I've already taught myself not to hope anymore? She stared at him, eyes searching desperately, almost cruelly, for even a flicker of a lie. But there was none. Just Jungkook. Open. Bare. Desperate. Looking at her like she was the only thing left he believed in. And that scared her more than anything. Because in the back of her mind, beneath every wall she built, she already knew. He's telling the truth. But she didn't want it to be true. She didn't want to feel what she used to feel. She didn't want to fall again. So she did what hurt people do best, defended herself. With a sharp breath, Wyan pushed him back hard. The contact startled him, and he let go. She took a shaky step back, her chest heaving, not from anger, but from fear. From the pain of almost believing. Jungkook stumbled back a step, arms falling to his sides. He didn't reach for her again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't plead. He just stood there, chest rising and falling, his eyes still on her face. The silence between them buzzed louder than any scream. Wyan looked away, jaw clenched, like she was trying to hold something in tears or words, even she didn't know. He could see it, the conflict storming inside her. The way her hands trembled even though she tried to hide them. The way her eyes refused to meet his, as if afraid they might betray her. Jungkook swallowed the lump in his throat. Then, finally, quietly, "I'm not going to force you to believe me." His voice was calm, tired, honest. "You don't owe me your trust, Wyan. But I owe you the whole truth," he murmured, voice raw. "If my silence became the reason you bled all these years, then giving you every piece of my heart is the least I can do." He watched her shoulders tighten again, the tremor in her fingers betraying a battle she refused to show on her face. His own hands curled at his sides, aching to reach for her, choosing restraint instead. "I can see it, we're both still hurting," he said, softer still. "Maybe what we need most is closure, for both our wounds. If ending this pain means standing here, confessing every ugly, terrified part of me, I'll do it. Because seeing your pain, knowing I'm the cause, hurts more than anything I've ever felt." The honesty settled between them like a fragile truce. For the first time since she'd pushed him away, Wyan turned fully toward him, not with anger, but with something quieter, the faintest easing of her guarded stance. Her gaze met his. The storm in her eyes hadn't cleared, but its fury had paused, waiting to hear what he wanted to say. Jungkook had always been the forgotten one, the child who was there, but never truly seen. From a young age, he learned that his worth was measured against Jihoon, his older brother. Jihoon, who was everything their father wanted, smart, disciplined, destined for success. Jungkook, on the other hand, was drawn to music, to art, to things that couldn't be measured in grades or business plans. His father never understood him. Never tried to. And as the years passed, the comparisons became more brutal, more public. Jungkook's achievements, school talent shows, sketches, songs, meant nothing at home. He was a disappointment. A mistake. He tried to please. God, he tried. But nothing was ever enough. Eventually, he stopped trying. He built walls. Carried anger. Resented Jihoon not because his brother was cruel, but because he was perfect. Because he was loved. Their bond frayed under the weight of silence and expectations, never broken but always distant. Then Yunya entered their lives, Jihoon's wife. She was the first person in the family who treated Jungkook like he mattered. She listened, encouraged him, made him feel seen. During her pregnancy, Jungkook became more involved, helping, smiling more, even if he still couldn't meet Jihoon's eyes without bitterness. It was during this fragile time that Yn came into his life. She didn't know his past, didn't see him as a disappointment. With her, he could breathe, laugh, feel normal. But the peace didn't last. One night, pushed to the edge by his father's cruelty, Jungkook finally snapped. He told him maybe it would have been better if he were never part of his life. The accident happened. His father, Jihoon, Yunya, gone. Only Noah survived. The grief was unbearable. But it was the guilt that destroyed him. The words he said haunted him. "You wished them gone. And they left, so why crying?" That voice, his inner demons, never left his head. And when Yn stood before him, asking why he disappeared, confessing her feelings, eyes filled with tears, love and hope. Jungkook couldn't accept it. Not because he didn't feel the same, but because he did. Too much. Loving her felt dangerous. What if history repeated itself? What if he lost her too? So he did the only thing he thought could protect her. He broke her heart before the world could break his again. It had barely been 24 hours since his world turned to ash. His father, brother, and Yunya gone. And now, the doctor's words haunted him with fresh terror. The baby's condition is critical. He's struggling to breathe. We can't promise anything. Noah. The only piece of them left. And in Jungkook's ears, Yunya's final voice echoed like a prayer, please. Please save my baby. He couldn't lose him too. If Noah didn't survive, there would be nothing left worth breathing for. Nothing left of the family he never got to love the right way. Fueled by desperation, Jungkook ran. Down the white corridors. Past the nurses' voices. Toward the neonatal ward, as if reaching Noah faster could somehow keep him alive. But his mind, overloaded and frantic, didn't see where he was going, and he collided into someone mid-corner. He staggered back, barely registering the figure at first. Until she looked up. YN. His heart stopped. For a second, it was like the world went silent. She stood there, stunned, and he was not ready. Not like this. Not covered in grief. Not shaking. Not broken. Seeing her in that moment was like facing a truth he wasn't ready to admit existed outside his pain. And so, he didn't. He didn't look in her eyes properly. He acted like she was a stranger in front of Hannah, refused to admit that he knows her, and kept walking fast. He was too deep in panic to notice the way her expression fell, too consumed by fear to see the disappointment flicker across her face, too shattered to see the silent resentment settle in her eyes. They sat in silence. Both on the floor of YN's apartment, the warmth from earlier long gone, replaced by the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the heaviness of unspoken truths. YN had her knees pulled tightly to her chest, her arms wrapped around them like a barrier. Jungkook sat beside her, a little distance apart, his back against the wall, head tilted slightly up, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. YN stole glances at him. There was something about the way his face shifted now, no longer hardened, no longer tense with frustration or longing. Just pain. Quiet pain that stretched over time and wore down his features like the sea on stone. He looked older in that moment. Not in age, but in experience. In weight. Then, slowly, he turned to her. His gaze met hers, steady this time. No hesitation. Do you know that day you saved me, YN? His voice was low, almost hoarse. It made her eyebrows furrow. She blinked, confused. Jungkook gave a small smile, barely there, more sorrow than joy. Jungkook, I don't know if you remember. But that day, when everything happened, I didn't know it was you who saved Noah. YN tilted her head, unsure. Her mind chased through the fog of years. Her work, her shifts, the patients. So many faces. So many children. But then, a flicker. A memory, the day she stumbled to Jungkook. A newborn. His mother had died in an accident. The baby wasn't breathing properly. She remembered rushing into the emergency ward. How fragile he was. How still. And when he finally took that breath, when she brought him back from the edge, he gripped her finger with a strength that startled her. Like he didn't want to let go. Her eyes widened. That was Noah. Jungkook nodded. Yeah. You met him before I did. The weight of that sentence sat between them. For that, I'll be forever grateful, YN, he said, voice unsteady now. Because if Noah hadn't survived, I don't think I would have either. He looked away for a second, as if even imagining that version of his life was unbearable. You gave me something to live for, without even knowing it. YN didn't speak. Her lips parted slightly, eyes shining as the truth crashed through her like a wave. All these years, and she hadn't known. Jungkook, and when you came back into our lives, Noah didn't just warm up to you. He chose you, he continued. He doesn't let people in that easily. But you. It was like, he turned to her again, this time with a seriousness that pulled every bit of oxygen from the room. Choosing you as his doctor wasn't a rash decision, YN. It never was. I saw how he looked at you. How you cared for him. It wasn't professional, it was something deeper. I could understand YN's throat tightened. When you said Noah hates you now, it's not true, not even close. You loved him like he was yours. And you're the first person to ever hold him, to ever save him. You do have a right on him more than anyone. His voice grew softer now. Even if you're not his real mother, you understand him better than I do. I'm just his guardian, but you're really his guardian angel. Always shows up whenever Noah is in trouble, and I can't name this, but your relationship with Noah is special than you think. Wine dropped her forehead onto her knees, her arms curling tighter around herself. Her chest trembled, and this time, she didn't stop the tears. The memory of Noah's words from days ago, the heartbreak, the hurt, the distance, had carved into her heart deeply. But now, something in her started to ease. The guilt didn't vanish, but it loosened. She sniffled, quietly, and finally looked up at him. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Did you think I wouldn't understand? Jungkook shook his head instantly. No. I knew you'd understand. I knew you would have gone to any length to help me, help Noah. He exhaled, looking down. But that's exactly why I didn't. You were just starting your career. You had dreams, focus, purpose. And I was a wreck. My world had burned down and I couldn't ask you to carry it. You didn't deserve that burden. You deserved better than me. His voice cracked slightly at the end. He didn't meet her eyes this time. Wyan stared at him for a moment before shaking her head softly. You're not a wreck, she said, her voice trembling but firm. You're stronger than you think. I don't even know how you survived all of that. Alone. A sad smile touched his lips, the kind that broke more than it reassured. Doesn't matter. I still hurt you. In trying to hold everything together, I let go of the one person I shouldn't have. He looked at her then. Finally, I made mistakes. I'm still learning. But I needed you to know the truth. All of it. YN breathed slowly, trying to ground herself, but her thoughts were spinning. So much had unraveled in just minutes. Too much. And yet, one question rose quietly from her lips. So, you really have feelings for me? She didn't look at him like someone fishing for romance. She looked like someone trying to believe again and unsure how. Jungkook's gaze locked with hers, unwavering. Yes, he said without pause. His voice was steady, low, certain. YN stared at him, wide-eyed. Her breath caught in her throat. And still, she didn't know how to process it. Because the wound hadn't healed. But for the first time, she could finally see the one who made it, bleeding too.